Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Caramoor Conversations. I'm Kathy Schuman, the Artistic Director of Caramoor, and I'm here with Richard Egarr, Music Director of the Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra, who we are bringing to Caramoor for the second time ever, but the first time with Richard on July 18th. So I thought it would be nice to sit down across the ocean because Richard.
Yeah, no, I'm so looking forward. It's great to speak to you. I'm so looking forward to being across in the States. The last time I left the States for the last time on Valentine's Day, 2020, after some concerts with PBO in San Francisco. So it's been a while. It's been too long.
Yeah, well, we're very excited to have you back on our shores and for this program, which was actually not the original program we thought you were going to be bringing before this whole pandemic hit, but I'm delighted that we're bringing a 17th century British Baroque program. And thought we'd just talk to you a little bit about that. I mean, everybody knows Purcell as sort of the figure of this period, but you've put some other composers on the program. So maybe let's start with the other composers.
Sure. Actually, there's a plethora of organists of Westminster Abbey. The first composer on the program is Christopher Gibbons. Now, some of your more hardcore early musicians or people that just go and hear choirs will know Orlando Gibbons, but this is the son of Orlando Gibbons, who was really a forgotten composer. And I think I sort of dug him out about 15, 20 years ago.
Not literally, I hope.
Well, not literally, because I was reading Pepys and Pepys was talking about the famous Mr. Gibbons, and I thought, hang on a minute, that can't be Orlando because Orlando was already dead. And I'd never come across another Gibbons. So I did some digging and I found all these amazing pieces of music dotted through libraries in Britain, mostly in Oxford and in London, of music by Orlando's son, Christopher. And he's really a major composer, and he got forgotten because of the whole Cromwell interregnum period when music and theatre didn't officially exist. So he was sort of locked away in the provinces. But as soon as the Restoration happened in 1660, he was made organist of Westminster Abbey. So he was a very famous musician, and he wrote all this incredible music. And we're playing a four-part fantasy for four-part string band, which is again from one of these library manuscripts which I dug out. So I don't think it's quite an American premiere because I think that PBO have played it in one of their podcasts over the last while. But it's certainly probably a live premiere of this amazing fantasy by this forgotten and brilliant composer. The other composer on the program is John Blow, who had the dubious distinction of being both Purcell's predecessor and his successor as organist at Westminster Abbey, because Purcell died so young. He was, of course, Purcell was Blow's student, and John Blow, he was organist, I think, from 1668 or something like that, and then gave up the position to Purcell in 1679. And after Purcell died, he took the post up again. And John Blow, it's all of this English music. It's very much sort of Monty Python-esque. There's something about English humour, and particularly 17th century English music, which has a certain quirky wit about it. I mean, if you know the music from before Cromwell, it was lots of contrapuntal fun and games and sort of war games almost with counterpoint, and this very dense English quirky counterpoint, very angular, often very combative counterpoint, and that was sort of gradually ironed out during the century. But we still have that in the music of Blow and Purcell as well. We have these slightly angular, quirky. Quirky is a very good word, and it goes along with the English wit. I think that sort of wit has always been part of English culture and music. And
can you give us an example? Can you play us a little example of what you quirky wit?
I don't know whether I can. It's a difficult one to sort of quantify. It's like, what makes a joke funny. It's sort of in the telling rather than. I'll have a think about that. Maybe come back to that. But the sort of the sort of harmonic quirkiness and the angularities. That kind of thing, these little dissonances, which has always been a part of English music, even in the 16th century. Yeah, sort of witty bits of counterpoint and fighting and biting and running around. So it's a very, very important part of this music. So blues music has that as well, although it's a little more, I'd say, less not accessible. Accessible is the wrong word. It's a very particular style, like all of these composers. But there's some wonderful songs. That one particular favorite is "Lovely Selina," which is the last song in the set by John Blow, which is one of the things that all of these composers used to create long-term structures was the passacaglia, or the ground bass. Purcell's famous for the ground bass, was particularly something like Dido's Lament. Which repeats, and then he does amazing things on top. And Music for a While, which is another which you'll hear in the program. There's the English wit, that quirkiness. And both Blow and Purcell were fantastic at writing ground basses, particularly Purcell. But the Lovely Selina is a sort of typical chaconne, which is just... It's 4-note ascending bass, which came from Italy and the whole passacaglia chaconne tradition. And of course, you can play those things endlessly. You can vamp and just riff on those bass lines as long as you like. So that they were one way of creating long-term structures. And you'll hear a couple of really important ones from Purcell, the big chaconne from King Arthur, and at the end of the Fairy Queen set, the big chaconne which ends the Fairy Queen semi-opera. So it's fantastic music. Anyways, of course, I'm English, so I would say that. But I think you've just had Independence Day, so that's when you got rid of us. But I think there's a sort of understanding of that humour from in America as well, because it's related. It's related. So
I have to admit, I'm going to have trouble now getting Monty Python out of my mind in the context that we're playing. That was not a connection that I made before. But could you talk a little bit more about Purcell and obviously this complete, he really dominated this period. What made Purcell so great?
The same thing that makes someone like Bach great. He had an amazing command very early, or Mozart, a command of the language, musical language. The whole tradition of choristership and cathedral training in Britain has been, in England particularly, but Britain as a whole has been there for so long. And that, if you have a spark of music in you, it just feeds your imagination and your fantasy. And I'm sure that you can see that from even Purcell's earliest music. It has that. He's like Handel as well. They were musical sponges. They absorbed all of the stuff around them, and they could. By the age of in his late teens, he was writing as great music as his teacher. Same way that I'm sure Bach was the same. He's just he absorbed the native style, and then also started to add in bits of Italian influence, which were around. Of course, the big thing was also the French influence, which was coming in by the end of the century. And he just, and it's interesting, we're playing Fairy Queen, which was one of his later pieces, one of his last pieces before he died. And you can hear there's much more sort of Frenchness about it, but there's still the backbone is still English, I think, very much so. And just he absorbed the popular elements which Handel also, when he came to England, he did the same thing. He absorbed all of his experiences and could produce the best examples of what was around. And Purcell did the same. It would be fascinating to see what Purcell would have produced 20 years down the line, when Handel would have been in England as well. It would be amazing but of course we'll never know. But yeah.
So like many period instrument groups, you are leading from the harpsichord, correct?
Absolutely.
And is that how it would have been done at the time as well?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of this kind of concert would not necessarily have happened in the 17th century, but the idea of leading an ensemble from either the violin or the the keyboard was normal, particularly in staged music. So the sort of masks and theatre music which Purcell was producing. You would have had the famous string band, which was based on Lully's orchestra in France, the 24 violins of the King. The English had the same, except they own, probably union rules, they only use 12 at a time. So it's the same idea. You had a string band which was there to accompany the theatre music, or actually to play a lot of the dances, and you'll hear a lot of dances, fairies dances, dances of the green men, monkeys dances, all sorts of exotic stuff played by the instruments, the string band. And that was often supplemented by whatever wind instruments were around, sometimes trumpets and timps as well, depending on how splendid the piece needed to be. But the string band was the kind of core of the orchestra. And that would have been led probably from the first fiddle, or if Purcell was there, I'm sure he would have been sitting at the keyboard playing as well. The interesting thing is there was a sort of disconnect between the two groups. As I say, the string band was there to provide the fun music, the dances and all the sort of the ballet and stuff. They would support the choir when they were singing. The singers were generally accompanied by the plucked instruments. So you have the harpsichord, the theorbo or arch flute or whatever you would like to call it from that time, and also the gamba, which wasn't a part of the string family. The string band was the violin family. So you have all the sizes of violin, from little violin to big violin, which was the bass violin. And by the end of the 17th century, also the double bass had come into the orchestra. The gamba, of course, is part of the lute family. It's basically a lute like that. It's a bowed lute. It's part of that family. So it's a chordal playing instrument. So the singers generally were accompanied just by the chordal playing instruments. But I'm sure that that Purcell would have been there directing the players from the keyboard, so sitting in the keyboard directing. So that was a normal. The idea of a conductor isn't really necessary until you get really to the 19th century, except for big choral works. And if you've need someone there coordinating stuff, but. It's always been part of mine. I've always loved playing because it's also psychology. It's a good psychology to be one of the players, not just somebody there with a stick, waving a stick around. And it's not really appropriate either. But it's fun, and especially because as a continuo player, you get to do all the fun stuff with the singers and accompany the singers, which is just a great pleasure. And having been in that whole cathedral tradition and trained as a singer, I love working with singers, and I'm very happy we've got Rowan with us.
Yeah, so speaking of singers, probably most of our audience won't be familiar with Rowan because she hasn't performed that much in the US.
No.
So could you just say a little bit about her and why she's so well suited for this program?
We did a solo disc with myself and an American theorbo player, William Carter, who works with the Academy of Ancient Music in England and English Concert. We did a solo disc of Purcell songs with Rowan. I've known her, I think, for probably 7 or 8 years. I first came across her when she was probably in early 20s. We did the Britton Piers Foundation, the summer school, and we did a production of Poppaea, and she sang Drusilla. And as soon as she opened her mouth, and I thought, oh yes, there's a real star here, and her career has shown that. She's become a very big figure, certainly in the English scene, and I'm very happy that she can come and join us for this, guys, because she sings anything particularly brilliantly. She's even recorded the Schoenberg second string quartet, I think, as well. But she is just a wonderful soprano. Well, you'll hear for yourself.
We're excited to hear her.
Nice.
So yes, I'm getting very, very excited for this program. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience in advance of the concert about anything else on this program?
I don't think so. I think just come and open your mind to English quirkiness and enjoy it. It's fabulous music, and I think it will communicate itself very, very well to the audience. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to being with you and having a live audience, because it's been so lacking in the last 16, 18 months. And
yeah, really, well, we've had 2 full weeks of concerts already and live audiences, so we're waiting for you. And once again, to remind everybody, this is Sunday, July 18th at 4 p.m. at Caramoor. So please come and bring your friends, and you're going to have a wonderful afternoon of English Baroque music. And Richard, we're excited that you're going to be there for the first time.
Absolutely, me too. Very
Forward
much.
to showing you around. So
Yeah.
I'll see you really soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.